It begins quietly. He does not weep, nor rage, nor call. He tells himself he is fine, even laughs with friends, even flirts. But in the evenings, when silence falls, something hollow begins to open inside him, a space where your presence used to echo. He mistakes that emptiness for peace. He calls it freedom. Yet freedom without meaning is only exile. Every man believes that by walking away, he will feel alive again. But what dies in the ending of love is not only the relationship, it is a part of his own soul. For in every bond, he gives away fragments of himself he never truly understood. When she leaves, those fragments go with her, and he meets the one companion he has long avoided, his own emptiness. He will fill it with work, with laughter, with new women, with noise. Yet the silence remains. For that emptiness is not a punishment, it is a summons. The self has torn open the shell of his illusions and demands to be seen. The man who mistakes this for loss will flee it forever. The one who dares to face it will be transformed. Every woman who has ever wondered, does he not care, must understand it is not indifference that hardens him, it is fear. The fear of meeting the desolation that follows love, of being confronted with how little of himself he ever knew. For love exposes the wound beneath the armor, and when love ends, the armor is all that remains. Do not envy his freedom. He does not yet have it. He is only standing in the ruins of what once reflected his soul back to him. One day, when he grows still enough, when the laughter fades and the new faces blur into sameness, he will begin to feel what he lost, not you, but the part of himself he touched only through you. That is the quiet truth men hide after a breakup. They do not escape love, they are initiated by it. What begins as emptiness will become the very space where their soul demands to be born. It begins with quiet, not the soft quiet of peace, but the kind that hums in the bones. The door closes, the air shifts, and what remains is not absence but echo. I have seen this silence many times in men. They do not cry. They merely continue to exist, like stones in a river, letting the water of time pass over them. He tells himself he is free. He believes the weight has been lifted, that he can breathe again. Yet this breath tastes of emptiness. The laughter with friends, the late-night stories, all of it feels like speaking into a hollow room. For what he calls freedom is only the first mask grief wears. In this quiet, the man meets himself, though he does not know it. He stands before the mirror of his own solitude, startled by the reflection that looks back. The face is familiar, yet behind the eyes lives something stranger, a question he has long refused to ask. Who am I when I am no longer seen? Love had bound him to a rhythm, a sharing of morning light, a presence that softened the edges of his world. Now, stripped of her gaze, he feels the world flatten. The colors fade, not because she took them, but because she had carried his own warmth into motion. She had made visible the life he could not yet feel. He fills the hours, work, laughter, sleep. But between each task lies the soundless ache, a shadow that follows him into every room. It is not her he misses, not entirely. It is the part of himself that lived only in her reflection, a gentleness, a wonder, a need to belong. These he now calls weakness. I have learned that when the beloved departs, the soul begins its secret work. What feels like loss is often the stirring of hidden life. The heart becomes an empty field, but under its frozen surface, something moves slow, unseen, inevitable. This silence is not death, it is the soil of transformation. Men often mistake this stillness for healing. They think they are better because they feel nothing, but numbness is only the armor of the wounded. The soul has withdrawn its voice, waiting to be heard. And when the man grows tired of noise, when even freedom tastes bitter, he will begin to listen. The first sign comes like a whisper. It might be a dream, a memory, a scent that drifts from nowhere, something small yet piercing. The psyche begins to speak in symbols, for words have failed. It tells him, you are not fine, you are unfinished. And so begins the long return to what was lost, not the woman, but the self. I have called this the moment when the unconscious opens its gate. It is a summons disguised as emptiness. If the man turns away, he will grow restless, seeking new distractions. If he dares to stand still, he will feel the breath of something ancient rise within. The quiet will begin to speak. It is here, in this quiet beginning, that transformation hides. The man does not yet know it, but he has crossed a threshold. The world outside may look the same, but within, a seed has been planted, one that will break his armor, expose his fear, and teach him the language of his own soul. There comes a night when the silence no longer soothes him. It turns sharp, filled with the weight of unspoken things. He feels anger without reason, sorrow without name. It is here that another presence awakens, one he has carried all his life, though he has never met it face to face. I have called it the shadow. It is what he has refused to see in himself. Every man believes he knows who he is, the dutiful one, the loyal one, the strong one. But these are only the faces he has learned to wear. The shadow is made from all the things those faces have hidden: the envy, the fear, the longing, the helplessness. When love ends, the walls crumble, and these forgotten selves walk out from the dark. He will feel them before he names them. The sudden temper, the cold jealousy, the need to prove he no longer cares. They move through him like ghosts, using his hands, his voice, his eyes. He will say, "She made me like this," but it is not to her. It is the unlit part of his own soul demanding to be known. The man who runs from his shadow runs from his own strength. For every light casts a darkness. To become whole, one must face what one fears to look at. But most men, when they see the first hint of that darkness, turn away. They busy themselves with other faces, other pleasures. They call their forgetting a cure, yet the shadow does not vanish when ignored. It waits, it seeps into new love, shaping it into the old wound. It whispers into every choice, coloring each joy with the same old sorrow. I have seen men repeat their heartbreaks like prayers, each time believing it is fate, when in truth it is their own unseen self crying to be recognized. In dreams, the shadow often appears as an intruder, a thief, a rival, a darker twin. The man may dream of fighting, running, hiding. He does not know that he is wrestling with himself. The dream tries to make him see that the enemy he fears is not outside, but within. Only by embracing that figure can peace return. When I worked with such men, I would tell them, the shadow is not evil. It is primitive, untamed, honest. It is the life that has been locked away behind good manners and pride. The man who allows this side to speak learns humility, learns compassion, for he sees that his cruelty and tenderness are born from the same soil. But the man who refuses, his shadow becomes hollow. He grows proud, cold, certain of his innocence. He will speak of the faults of others, never of his own. And in this false purity, he grows blind to his real nature. The shadow denied becomes a monster. It feeds on secrecy. It devours the joy he pretends to feel. Often, the shadow first shows itself through pain, a sudden loneliness, a longing he cannot name. He may think he misses the woman, but what he truly misses is the self. She revealed the childlike wonder, the tenderness, the need to be loved. Now those feelings lie in darkness, waiting for him to claim them as his own. When the man begins to see that the rage and grief are his teachers, not his enemies, a strange thing happens. He feels alive again. The emotions he feared now burn with meaning. They show him where he has hidden his truth. The shadow no longer appears as punishment, but as guide leading him toward the buried parts of his soul. Still, this path is not easy. The shadow does not surrender to reason. It demands honesty. It asks him to admit that his strength was often pride, that his calm was sometimes numbness, that his silence was fear. It asks him to forgive himself for being human, which to a proud man feels like death. In my work, I learned that no one can meet the shadow alone for long. It draws energy from the depths. It can overwhelm. Yet to refuse it entirely is to remain a stranger to oneself. The task is not to defeat it, but to know it, to make a pact with the night inside one's heart. Only then does morning come without guilt. Every man carries within him two figures, the one he shows to the world and the one the world never sees. The first builds, achieves, commands. The second feels, fears, and dreams. When love ends, these two meet. The armor cracks, and the hidden one steps forward. He is wild, confused, alive. To reject him is to lose half of life itself. I once wrote that the shadow is 90% pure gold. It hides not only sin but vitality, not only rage but power. In its depths lie the instincts that make a man creative, passionate, and whole. When he dares to enter that darkness, he discovers not only what he fears but what he has longed to be. Yet this discovery cannot be forced. It unfolds slowly, like eyes adjusting to night. The man must learn to sit in silence, to let the images of his own soul rise without judgment. He may see faces he despises, acts he regrets, memories he buried, but as he looks upon them without turning away, they soften. They begin to speak. They tell him, "We are you. We are what you could not be when you had to be strong. We are what you felt when you thought you must not feel." And in that moment, he begins to understand that the shadow is not his downfall, but his completion. The parts he once exiled are the very ones that give life its depth. A man who has met his shadow walks differently. There is gravity in his voice, kindness in his eyes. He no longer fears being misunderstood, for he understands himself. He no longer seeks to prove his worth, for he has seen his weakness and survived it. The fire that once burned him now gives him warmth. The shadow once faced becomes ally. It protects him from false virtue and hollow victories. It reminds him to remain humble, to remember that he is made of both light and clay. In its dark mirror he finds not shame, but truth. And truth, though it wounds, is the first form of love the soul offers itself. When a man begins to see that his pain is a mirror, not a curse, something sacred stirs. He realizes that the one he blames is the one who helped him see. Through her leaving, the door opened to his own depths. The shadow, awakened by loss, has become the teacher of his renewal. And so he begins to walk again, slower, quieter, but with new eyes. He no longer divides the world into saints and sinners, winners and losers. He sees that all men are travelers between light and darkness, and that the heart's wholeness is born from their meeting. What began as heartbreak has become a descent into truth. When the shadow rises, most men retreat behind their armor. They call this armor strength. They speak firmly, they stand tall, they say they are fine. Yet this firmness is only the tightening of fear. I have seen how men become statues of their own pride, polished, admired, unmoving. They forget that to be alive is to bend. The mask they wear, I once named it the persona, is the face the world rewards. It is shaped not by the soul, but by the eyes of others. It is carved by praise, by duty, by the hunger to belong. From boyhood, he is taught that love is earned through performance. To be loved for himself seems too dangerous a dream. When love ends, this mask grows heavier. It becomes his last defense. For without her gaze, he feels unseen, and without being seen, he doubts he exists. So he puts on the face of control, of success, of calm. Yet beneath that calmness, something trembles, the faint sound of a heart that longs to be held, not admired. He goes to work early, stays late, fills every hour with tasks. He tells himself this is discipline, but it is escape. The soul cannot be silenced by labor. Even achievement, if used as a wall, becomes a prison. The man builds a temple to his own efficiency and kneels before it as though it were God. Friends will praise him for his composure. They will say, "He handled it well." But I have learned that such words often conceal tragedy. For the man who appears most unbroken is often the one most divided. His tears have turned inward, watering a loneliness that grows in secret. In dreams, the persona sometimes crumbles. The man dreams of being naked in a crowd or lost without his uniform, his title, his name. The dream is not mocking him, it is merciful. It is the soul's way of showing him what he has become, a mask with no face behind it. He may wake in panic, wondering who he is, if not her lover, not his title, not the man others expect him to be. This confusion is holy. For the first time, he is touching life without disguise. The ego trembles because it senses the nearness of something greater, the self, which asks for truth instead of approval. To remove the mask is no simple task. It has grown into the skin. It has been praised too long to be questioned. Yet love, by ending, has already begun to loosen it. What was once a role has become unbearable. The words he speaks sound foreign in his own mouth. The laughter he gives feels like another man's. I have said that the persona is necessary. It protects us from the chaos of the world. A man without it is like a body without skin. But when the mask hardens, when it refuses to let the inner voice speak, it turns from servant to jailer, and the soul, like a caged bird, begins to beat its wings against the walls. At first, he will resist the call of the inner life. He will chase new faces, hoping one might mirror him again. He will tell himself he needs closure, though what he seeks is reflection. The woman he desires now is not truly her, it is the lost warmth of being seen. Each new gaze is a search for his own outline, but the mask blocks that vision. It says, be charming, be strong, be clever. It does not say, be real. And so he performs. He plays the role of the man who has moved on. Yet even in his laughter there is weariness, as if he knows the script too well. I have called this state psychic fatigue, the soul's exhaustion from pretending. There are moments when the mask slips. Alone at night, he feels tears rise for no reason. He quickly wipes them away, ashamed, afraid that to weep is to fail. But it is here that life begins to return. The heart denied too long breaks its silence. The tears are not weakness, they are the water of renewal. I once told a patient, you are not what others praise, nor what you fear they condemn. You are the meeting of both the image that lives between. He looked at me, lost, as though I had spoken a language he had forgotten. In time, he understood that the man he called himself was a house built on sand. Only when it fell could he see the sky. To remove the mask, one must first see how tightly it fits. It clings to the skin of habit, the handshake, the small talk, the smile that means nothing. The man begins to notice how often he lies, not out of malice, but to be acceptable. Each false word leaves a small wound. Each performance empties him further. Slowly, he grows tired of this act. He begins to crave silence again, not the silence of avoidance, but of truth. He walks alone, sits by rivers, drives without destination. He does not know it, but this is prayer. The world's voice grows dim, and in its place another voice stirs, quieter, older, his own. That voice does not flatter him. It says, you have hidden behind strength because you feared tenderness. You wore success like armor because you feared failure. You spoke of freedom because you feared love. It speaks without judgment, for it knows that every mask was once made to survive. When the man listens to this voice, he feels a new kind of strength, one that does not boast. It is not the strength of steel, but of roots. It bends, endures, and still holds firm. He begins to see that the persona was never meant to be destroyed, only softened, made transparent enough for the soul to shine through. Now he can stand before others without needing to impress them. His words slow, his eyes meet theirs without defense. He speaks simply, and his truth carries weight. For behind his words now lives something alive, his own being. The world may not understand this change. Some will say he has lost ambition, others that he has grown distant, but he knows he has only stopped performing. He no longer trades authenticity for approval. The applause that once drove him now sounds hollow. Silence, once feared, has become his companion again. I have seen this rebirth many times. It is not loud, it is not triumphant, it is quiet, steady, and real. The man begins to live from within rather than from the mirror of others. He walks not as one seeking admiration, but as one who has found a deeper gaze his own. The mask of strength has fallen, yet he is not weak. He is softer, yes, but not broken. He has learned that to be open is not to be defenseless, but to be human. The armor of pride has melted into the patience of understanding. In this humility, the soul begins to breathe again. And when he next meets a woman, he will not ask her to prove his worth. He will not build his reflection upon her eyes. He will meet her as one who already sees himself. The love that grows from such a man will not be an escape, but a joining of two whole hearts, not a flight from loneliness, but a dance within it. The mask, once a symbol of false power, becomes a reminder. It whispers, remember how easily truth can be hidden. Remember that strength without softness is only fear in disguise. The man who remembers this lives wisely. He does not boast of being healed, he simply lives closer to the center of himself. Thus the man who once sought to prove his worth now learns the quiet art of being. The crowd fades, the applause dies. What remains is his own voice, calm and unforced. He has not conquered the world, he has befriended his own soul, and in that friendship lies the only strength that endures. When the mask begins to fall, the man finds himself standing before a deeper mystery, the image of the inner woman. I have called her the anima, for she is the breath of his soul, the living bridge between his reason and his feeling. Every man carries her within, yet few recognize her. Most meet her first through the women they love. He believed he loved her, the woman who left, but what he truly loved was what she awakened. Through her eyes, he felt his own heart. Through her care, he tasted the long-lost tenderness of the inner feminine. When she departed, that inner figure withdrew with her, and the man mistook the emptiness that followed as proof of her power. But she did not take his soul, she only revealed it. The anima is the mirror of a man's feeling life. She reflects all that is unseen and unlived within him, the songs he silenced, the dreams he forgot, the tears he never allowed. When he loses her outer form, he is forced to meet her inner one, that he turn inward, yet he keeps searching outward. He looks for her face in strangers. He seeks her voice in laughter, her presence in passing warmth. He tells himself he is moving on, yet every woman he meets bears the faint outline of the one before. What he chases is not her body, but the echo of his own soul. Until he understands this, his longing will never rest. In the beginning, the anima appears as desire. She is the muse, the enchantress, the unreachable ideal. She makes him believe that love is salvation. Yet her true gift is not possession, but reflection. She shows him what he lacks, not to torment him, but to complete him. When he sees her clearly, he realizes she has been within him all along, but this recognition is slow. The man may resist, fearing what it means to be guided by something so elusive. He was taught to trust only what can be seen, counted, or proved. The anima belongs to another language, the language of symbol, dream, and feeling. She speaks in whispers the intellect cannot grasp. At night she returns in dreams. Sometimes she is kind, sometimes cruel. Sometimes she appears as the lost beloved, other times as a stranger with familiar eyes. Her moods shift like water because she is not a person, she is the movement of the soul itself. The dream reveals her face as both light and shadow, for she holds all the opposites of love. In one dream, a man may see her standing beside a river, beckoning him to cross. He hesitates, for the water looks deep. Yet if he dares to enter, he will find that the river is himself, the flowing current of his own feeling life. To cross is to be reborn. To refuse is to remain forever on the shore of his own heart. Many men stop at this threshold. They prefer the safety of longing to the risk of depth. To face the anima is to admit that his logic does not rule all. It is to surrender to what cannot be explained, intuition, emotion, the quiet pull of the unseen. This surrender is not weakness. It is the beginning of wisdom. The anima, when denied, becomes dangerous. She turns from muse to siren, from guide to tormentor. The man who refuses to listen to her inner call will find her voice in every obsession, in the restless pursuit of beauty, pleasure, or approval. He will call it passion, yet it will be possession. The soul, denied its place within, demands it without. When a man projects his anima onto a woman, he asks her to carry his soul for him. He sees in her the beauty he has forgotten in himself. He makes her the guardian of his emotions, the vessel of his tenderness, the meaning of his life. But no woman can hold that burden forever. When she falters, he calls her false. When she leaves, he calls her cruel, never knowing it was his own soul he abandoned. The wise man, when love ends, begins to call his anima back home. He no longer chases her reflection in others. He sits in stillness, letting her voice return within. At first, she reproaches him for forgetting. She shows him the wounds he caused, the words he never spoke, the love he withheld, the fear that kept him distant. If he listens without pride, she forgives. This inner reconciliation transforms him. His emotions, once chaotic, begin to flow with clarity. He no longer fears to feel. His thoughts soften. His judgments grow kind. He discovers that what he once called weakness, empathy, tenderness, vulnerability are not flaws, but roots of strength. The anima has opened his heart to the world. Through her, he rediscovers imagination. He begins to dream again, not only in sleep, but in life. He feels beauty in small things, the sound of rain, the warmth of morning light, the laughter of a child. These are her gifts. She teaches him that meaning is not found in control, but in communion. Yet the anima does not wish to rule him. She seeks balance. If she becomes too dominant, the man may lose his ground, drowning in moods and fantasies. He may mistake feeling for truth, confusion for depth. The task is to hold her hand without letting her lead him into mist. She must dwell beside his reason, not above it. When harmony is found, the man feels whole. He no longer divides his life between duty and desire, thought and feeling. He understands that love is not something one possesses, but a field one tends within. The woman he once loved becomes a sacred image, not of loss, but of awakening. I have often said, the anima is the door through which a man finds his soul. She is the bridge from the mind to the heart, from isolation to meaning. When she is accepted, the man no longer fears the feminine within himself. He no longer mocks softness, nor hides from beauty. He learns that to be moved is not to be weak, but to be alive. The meeting with the anima is also a meeting with mystery. She does not promise peace, only depth. She leads him into the unknown parts of himself, where reason cannot follow. In that descent, he encounters both the terror and the wonder of being human. For the soul's treasures lie where the light fades in the dark soil of surrender. Through her guidance, the man discovers that what he sought in women was never their body alone, but the reflection of his own completeness. Every love was an echo of this longing. Every heartbreak a call to turn inward. The one who understands this ceases to blame and begins to thank, for even loss has become teacher. The anima matures as the man matures. In youth, she is the lover. In midlife, she becomes the guide. In old age, she becomes the wisdom that smiles in silence. She is the eternal feminine that Goethe wrote of, not a figure to be possessed, but the force that draws us upward and onward. Now, when he dreams, her form has changed. She no longer calls him from across the river. She walks beside him. She does not speak much. Her presence is enough. He feels calm in her company, for she is no longer other, she is within him. The soul and the mind have joined hands at last. This union gives rise to a new kind of love, not born of need, but of wholeness. The man who has met his anima can love without clinging, desire without losing himself. He does not ask the woman before him to complete him. He meets her as an equal, soul to soul. Such love no longer burns, it illumines. In this way, heartbreak has become initiation. The woman he lost was the messenger of his soul. Her absence drove him inward. Her memory taught him tenderness. Her silence led him to his own voice. The anima, once projected upon her face, now lives in him as wisdom, as peace, as the quiet music of life. And when he looks out upon the world again, he no longer sees it as cold or empty. He sees the feminine everywhere, in the moon's glow, in the soft rhythm of waves, in the patience of the earth. He knows that the world itself is alive, and that to love it is to remain forever in dialogue with his own soul. The man who has made peace with his anima walks differently through life. His strength has gentleness, his reason has warmth. He no longer fears emotion, for he knows it will not destroy him, it will teach him. His laughter is softer now, his gaze steadier. He carries within him the quiet grace of one who has met his own heart and bowed before it. Thus, what began as loss has turned into revelation. The woman he once loved was not taken from him. She was returned to him in another form. Her outer absence became his inner presence. Through her, he learned that love is not an event, but a direction inward, toward the soul, outward, toward all living things. This is the secret truth. The man who listens to his anima becomes whole. He no longer flees from love nor hides from pain. He sees that both are teachers, both reflections of the same eternal mystery. And when he loves again, it will not be to fill an emptiness, but to share an overflowing heart. Every transformation begins in darkness. After the man has glimpsed his inner soul, after he has touched the image of the anima within, he is brought often unwillingly into a deeper night. It is not the first night of heartbreak, noisy with grief and memory. It is a quieter, heavier darkness, one that asks not for movement, but surrender. I have seen this descent in dreams, in art, and in the slow change of men who no longer know who they are. It feels like death because, in a sense, it is. The man who he believed himself to be, the lover, the achiever, the strong one, begins to dissolve. His certainties melt like wax before a flame he cannot see. The ego trembles, for it senses the nearness of something vast. This descent is not punishment. It is the oldest rhythm of the soul, the same rhythm that moves the seed into the soil, that drives the sun beneath the horizon each night. The soul grows in darkness. Consciousness is widened only by descent into what was feared, forgotten, or forbidden. Without this fall, there is no rebirth. He feels lost. The world appears drained of meaning. The faces around him speak words that no longer reach him. He wakes with heaviness in his chest, as if carrying a stone he cannot set down. Nothing excites him. Everything feels hollow. He begins to suspect that life itself is empty. Yet this emptiness is not lifelessness. It is the clearing where something new is meant to appear. I have written that the unconscious seeks balance. When the upper world of reason grows too rigid, the lower world of the soul rises up to restore proportion. This uprising feels like despair, but it is restoration. The man's descent is the psyche's attempt to awaken him from his narrow life, to tear away the illusions that kept him from the wholeness of being. He dreams of fire now, of houses burning, forests in flame, the sky red as dawn. The fire is not destruction, it is purification. It consumes the false images he clung to. The ashes that remain are not defeat, but beginning. For in alchemy, the nigredo, the blackening, always precedes rebirth. The matter must rot before it can bloom. The modern man fears this rot, for it looks like failure. He calls it depression, though it is more ancient than any diagnosis. It is the night sea journey, the soul's voyage through death to life. In myth, every hero must pass through this underworld. Christ in the tomb, Odysseus in the land of shades, Osiris dismembered and reborn, each is a symbol of this same psychic truth. At first, he will resist the descent. He will cling to work, to movement, to noise. But the fire inside grows. The more he resists, the hotter it burns. The self, that deep organizing center of the psyche, has begun its work. It wants to make him whole. It will not stop until the false is burned away. When he finally yields, something strange happens. The fear remains, but it no longer rules him. He begins to observe his suffering instead of drowning in it. He sees that each pang of grief, each hour of emptiness, is a messenger carrying truth. The pain becomes meaningful. He understands that he is not dying, he is being remade. In this stage, the man's dreams change. He no longer fights monsters, he listens to them. He finds himself in caves, in temples, near ancient fires. Sometimes he meets an old man or woman, figures of wisdom, often speaking in riddles. These are archetypes of the self-signs that the psyche has begun to guide its own healing. The descent teaches humility. The man sees how little he truly controls. His pride softens. His compassion grows. He begins to forgive others, not from virtue, but from recognition. He sees his own weakness mirrored in theirs. Suffering unites what judgment once divided. What he once called failure, he now calls life. I have said that suffering is the fire of transformation. The alchemists called it calcinatio, the burning that releases spirit from matter. This fire strips away the false gold of ego, leaving only what is real. It is painful, yes, but sacred. Without this fire, the metal of the soul remains dull. Only through heat does it shine. He learns to stay with his pain, to feel it fully without fleeing. This is not resignation, it is courage. To face one's despair is to face the truth of existence, that all life is change, and every change demands the death of what was. In this awareness, he begins to sense peace in the very heart of sorrow. The man may retreat from society for a time. Solitude becomes his companion. The world of distraction loses its charm. He no longer seeks noise to fill the silence, for he has learned that silence is alive. It speaks in images, in faint intuitions, in sudden clarity. He listens as one listens to fire crackling in the dark with reverence, not fear. As the descent continues, he finds that the fire does not only destroy, it illuminates. He begins to see patterns in his life, how every heartbreak, every mistake was pointing him toward the same truth, that love, strength, and meaning were never outside him. They were seeds sleeping in the soil of his own being, waiting for this burning to release them. He begins to simplify. The endless striving falls away. He cares less for approval, more for authenticity. He no longer seeks to be extraordinary, only to be real. The goals that once dazzled him, wealth, success, recognition, lose their grip. He feels drawn instead to quietness, to honesty, to work that nourishes the soul. The alchemists spoke of the opus, the great work in which base metal is turned into gold. But they also knew that this work could only be done by those willing to endure the mortificatio, the symbolic death. The man in descent is performing this work inwardly. Each illusion burned is lead turned to gold. Each grief faced is spirit freed from form. He begins to see the beauty of decay. The falling leaves, the aging body, the silence after a storm, all mirror his own transformation. He realizes that life and death are not enemies, but dancers in the same rhythm. The old self dies only to make room for the new. What he once called loss, he now calls offering. Sometimes he feels nothing at all, only a vast stillness. This is the moment before rebirth, the quiet center of the storm. The fire has done its work, the ashes settle. From them, something glimmers a spark, small but steady. It is the first sign of the self emerging, the true center of the man's life. Now he begins to sense that he is not alone. The same force that broke him open is also guiding him. What seemed cruel was never punishment. It was necessity. The soul burns what it cannot keep so that it may reveal what cannot be lost. In surrender, he feels not defeat, but trust. He begins to dream of dawn. The fires fade into light. He sees landscapes greening after rain, broken statues made whole, rivers clearing after flood. Each dream tells him the same thing. The work is not to escape the fire, but to endure it until it becomes light. And so, he rises slowly, cautiously, but different. His eyes see deeper, his voice carries weight. He no longer seeks to explain his journey, for words cannot express what the fire has taught. He carries the wisdom of ashes, the knowledge that all creation begins in destruction, and that love, once lost, can return only as truth. The man who has passed through this inner burning no longer fears pain. He knows it as teacher. He no longer demands certainty, for he has found peace in the unknown. He no longer seeks to possess others, for he has learned that what is real cannot be taken, only received. When he looks back on the woman who left, he no longer sees betrayal or injustice. He sees the necessary wound that opened him to the deeper life. She was the spark that lit the fire. He was the wood that needed burning. The flame between them, once love, became transformation. Through her absence, he met the self that had waited in silence. Now the fire burns gently, not to destroy, but to warm. It lives as quiet intensity behind his words, as patience in his eyes. He has descended and returned. The man who feared loss has learned to let go. The man who sought freedom in escape has found it in surrender. And the man who once burned with desire now burns with understanding. In this light, he finally knows that the purpose of suffering was never to punish, but to reveal. The descent was not a fall, but a passage. The fire was not death, but purification. The man who emerges from it is not the same. He is simpler, truer, more alive. He carries within him a flame that does not consume, but illuminates. He has become his own hearth. When the fire has cooled and the ashes no longer sting, a stillness descends. It is not the numb quiet of avoidance, nor the despair of the early days, but a deep calm, the calm of something completed. The man who once feared silence now sits within it as if it were home. He has descended through darkness and come back carrying light. He does not call this enlightenment. He does not even call it healing. Words like that belong to the old world of striving. He simply feels different. Life has softened around him. Time moves slower. The smallest things, the wind in the trees, the taste of bread, the rhythm of footsteps feel strangely vivid. The world has become intimate again. He begins to understand that he has not returned to who he was before the loss. That man is gone. What remains is quieter, humbler, yet more whole. He no longer divides his heart into what should be and what must not be. He allows himself to feel joy without fear of its end and sorrow without shame for its depth. In doing so, he finds peace that cannot be taken away. When I watched men reach this place in their inner work, I often noticed a gentle confusion in their eyes. They would say, "I do not know what I am now." And I would tell them, that is a good sign, for to know oneself too quickly is to stop the growth of the soul. The self is not a fixed shape, but a living process. To live in awareness of it is to live in motion. He feels gratitude now, though he may not call it by that name. It shows itself in small gestures, in patience with strangers, in care for the ordinary, in kindness without reason. He has learned that love is not an act of possession, but of presence. When he gives now, he gives from fullness, not from need. The memory of the woman who left no longer wounds him. It stirs a quiet respect. She was both mirror and messenger, the one who unknowingly led him into the depths of his own heart. He does not wish her back, for he understands that what she awakened has never left him. Her absence gave birth to his inner life. He begins to dream differently. The storms are gone. The landscapes are wide and open forests bathed in gold, calm rivers, the quiet flight of birds. In some dreams, he meets her again, but she is not the woman she once was. She is an image of peace, radiant and wordless, smiling as if to say, "You have found what you sought." He wakes from such dreams not in longing, but in reverence. There is a tenderness in him now that frightens no one. It has the strength of roots. He speaks less, but when he does, his words carry a gravity they did not have before. He no longer rushes to prove, to win, or to be right. He has seen how every certainty can burn away. He prefers the truth that breathes, the kind that listens. He is not without desire, but desire too has changed its nature. It is no longer the hunger to complete himself, but the impulse to share what he has found. When he meets another soul, he does not cling, he listens. He loves not to escape solitude, but to celebrate it. His touch no longer asks, "Will you make me whole?" It whispers, "You too are whole." This is the fruit of individuation, though he may never use that word. It is the state in which the inner opposites, once at war, now speak to one another. Reason and feeling, strength and tenderness, light and shadow all take their place within him. The battle for identity has ended. What remains is a living unity, fragile yet enduring. He has discovered that freedom is not the absence of bonds, but the presence of meaning. Once he sought to live without attachment, mistaking detachment for strength. Now he understands that to love is not to lose oneself, but to find the greater self reflected in another. The world no longer feels like exile, but participation. In his solitude, he senses the quiet companionship of life itself. He walks through the world as one among many, not above, not below, but within. The trees, the stones, the faces he passes in the street, all seem to share the same subtle breath. He no longer sees himself as the center of things, but as part of a great pattern moving through time. I have often said that the self does not arrive like a sudden revelation. It unfolds as one learns to live in alignment with what is true. For this man, that truth has become simple. He must live what he knows. He must carry his inner understanding into the outer world, not as doctrine, but as quiet conduct. He no longer seeks to teach. His presence itself teaches. There will still be pain, of course. Life never ceases to wound, but now he meets suffering as an old friend. He knows that every sorrow contains its own seed of transformation. He does not rush to escape it. He listens for what it asks of him. Pain has become a language he understands. He feels a gentleness toward his former self, the boy who feared feeling, the man who hid behind pride. He does not judge him. He sees that every act of avoidance was a cry for safety. He thanks that frightened self for carrying him this far. Healing, he has learned, is not the erasure of the past, but its forgiveness. His relationships change. Some fall away, unable to meet him in his quietness. Others deepen. He draws to himself those who value truth over comfort, presence over distraction. The people who remain around him are few, but they feel like home. He no longer seeks many, he seeks real. There is also a new form of solitude that no longer feels lonely. It is a presence in absence, a quiet sense that he is accompanied even when alone. This, I have found, is the sign that a man has met his self. He no longer fears aloneness because he no longer feels separate from life. The boundaries between inner and outer, self and world, have grown thin. He begins to create not necessarily art, but gestures of meaning. He gardens, writes, builds, or simply tends to small things with devotion. The creative impulse that once sought recognition now seeks expression for its own sake. Through this creativity, he enters again into dialogue with the unconscious. The soul continues to speak, and he listens. Sometimes he remembers the old restlessness, the need to chase, to prove, to fill every quiet hour. It returns like a ghost, but he no longer fears it. He greets it as one greets a familiar visitor. "Ah, you again." He knows that the soul moves in cycles. Peace and unrest, clarity and confusion, these are not failures but seasons. He trusts the rhythm now. This trust is faith in its truest form, not belief in something unseen, but confidence in life itself. He no longer asks life to be easy or predictable. He only asks that it remain real. Whatever comes, joy or sorrow, love or loss, he receives with the same quiet acceptance, for he knows that everything belongs. The man who has come through the fire has no need to proclaim his transformation. He carries it in the way he lives. His gaze meets the world without judgment. His heart remains open without effort. Even when he falters, he returns easily to himself, as one returns home by a familiar path. And one day, without planning it, he will love again. Not out of loneliness, but out of abundance. The woman who meets him then will not encounter a man seeking refuge, but a man at peace with his own depths. His love will not ask to be saved, it will offer sanctuary. He will not demand that she heal him, he will honor the mystery that she too carries within. He will recognize her not by her beauty, but by her stillness, the way she listens to the same inner music he has come to know. Their bond will not be a cage, but a shared horizon. They will walk together not to complete each other, but to remind each other that life, in its fullness, is worth meeting again and again. The self has accomplished its task. It has drawn the man through loss, through fire, through darkness, and returned him to the world transformed. He moves now with the humility of one who knows that meaning is not created by will, but discovered through surrender. And when he stands once more in silence, in that same silence where the story began, he no longer feels emptiness. He feels presence. What was once a void has become a space alive with breath. It is no longer exile, it is home. He understands, finally, that what love took from him was never truly his to keep, and what it gave him can never be lost. Through the ending of love, he found the beginning of himself. The quiet truth men hide after a breakup is this: they are not destroyed by love's loss, they are remade by it. The soul, having burned through illusion, has returned to its rightful center. He is no longer searching, he has become. When the soul has returned home, one might believe the journey is finished. Yet wholeness is not an ending, but a rhythm, a breathing in and out between worlds. After the man has come back to himself, he begins to sense that something within him continues to move, to grow, to call him onward. I have called this the light that remains, the quiet radiance of the self that does not fade when the fire is done. This light is not loud. It has no triumph in it. It glows gently as dawn after a long night. It does not erase the past, but illumines it. He can look back now and see the entire path, the silence, the shadow, the mask, the descent, and the rising, all forming one continuous circle. He understands that the pain was not a detour, it was the way itself. He begins to feel gratitude for everything that once wounded him. The betrayal, the loneliness, the doubt, each now seems to have carried a secret mercy. They stripped away what was false, leaving only what was real. He sees that even suffering served the same purpose as joy, to bring him closer to life. The soul, like gold, is purified by fire. This gratitude is not sentimental. It is clear and steady, born of knowing. It allows him to forgive what was once unforgivable, not because he condones it, but because he sees that all things belong to a larger pattern of becoming. In this forgiveness, he does not forget. He understands. And understanding transforms memory into wisdom. Now he lives differently. His days are simpler, yet richer. He no longer measures life by what he achieves, but by how deeply he experiences it. Each encounter becomes a moment of meaning, the smile of a stranger, the sound of rain, the laughter of children. What once felt ordinary now feels sacred. He has learned that the divine hides not in visions or miracles, but in the quiet details of every day. There is no longer separation between his inner life and his outer life. They move as one stream. What he feels within shapes what he creates without, and what he meets in the world mirrors what he carries in the heart. This is the harmony of the self, the union of above and below, of spirit and matter, of dream and day. He no longer seeks perfection. Perfection, he now knows, is sterile. Life is holy precisely because it is incomplete. The crack in the vessel is where light enters. The flaw in the heart is where love breathes. In this acceptance of imperfection, he discovers true compassion for himself and for others. He meets other souls who carry their own wounds. He listens, not as a savior, but as one who has walked the same path. He does not preach. He simply holds space for their becoming, knowing that each soul must pass through its own fire. His presence alone offers comfort, not because he fixes pain, but because he no longer fears it. When he loves now, he loves with both eyes open. He sees the other not as an ideal, but as a fellow traveler, complete with light and shadow. He no longer asks love to rescue him from loneliness, for he knows loneliness as the soul's invitation to grow. In this love, there is freedom without distance, closeness without possession. He begins to notice the return of joy, not the fevered joy of youth, but a quiet delight in being alive. It rises in him without reason, like sunlight spilling through leaves. He has stopped trying to control. Happiness, it comes and goes like breath. To him, even sadness has beauty now, for it too is part of the dance of life. He sees the cycles repeating, how love leads to loss and loss to renewal, but he no longer fears the turning of the wheel. He knows that what disappears in one form reappears in another. The seasons of the heart are as natural as the seasons of the earth. The ending of one chapter is the whisper of the next beginning. Sometimes he feels the old ache, the ghost of longing, the echo of what was. He no longer drives it away. He lets it sit beside him, as one sits beside an old friend. He knows that to feel deeply is the proof of being alive. The ache is no longer enemy. It is reminder. It says, you have loved, you are human. In dreams, he now sees light not as blinding radiance, but as a warm glow that fills the space around him. He walks through landscapes of color, through rooms where windows open to endless horizons. He may meet the old figures, again the shadow, the anima, but they are changed. The shadow now smiles, the anima rests her hand in his. They are no longer teachers, but companions. He begins to sense that the self, that divine center which guided him through loss, is not merely within him, but also beyond him. It pulses in every living thing. It breathes through the cosmos. He sees that the same intelligence that healed his soul shapes the stars, the rivers, the wind. In this realization, his individuality does not vanish, it expands. He feels at once small and infinite. The man who has come this far no longer speaks of faith. He lives it. Faith, he now understands, is not belief in unseen powers, but participation in the mystery of being. To wake each day, to face the unknown with an open heart, to trust that life itself is meaningful, this is faith. It needs no temple, no promise, only presence. He may return to old places, the cafe where they once sat, the street where they said goodbye, and notice how differently he feels. What was once filled with sorrow now feels tender, almost holy. He sees that it was never merely a story between two people. It was a sacred ritual, an initiation into himself. The outer world reflects this inner change. Work becomes service, not ambition. Friendship becomes communion, not competition. Solitude becomes fullness, not emptiness. Even conflict loses its poison. He can disagree without hatred, correct without pride, and forgive without effort. He has become transparent to life. Nothing sticks, everything flows through. He learns that meaning is not a treasure to be found, but a way of seeing. Every moment, if entered fully, reveals its own depth. He no longer asks life for purpose, he brings purpose to life. By living with awareness, he makes even the simplest acts sacred, washing dishes, walking, breathing, watching the sun fade behind the hills. The light that remains is not something he keeps, it keeps him. It guides, without commanding, shines without blinding. It is the quiet flame of consciousness, the whisper of eternity within time. This light cannot be taught or earned, it can only be allowed. It is the natural radiance of the soul that has accepted itself. He may never speak of any of this, he will live it. Others may sense something in him, a calmness, a depth, a quiet joy. They may ask what changed, and he may smile, for he knows there is no answer that words can hold. Transformation does not announce itself, it breathes. It moves through the world as still water reflects the sky. And yet, deep within, he knows he has become a vessel of that eternal rhythm that moves all things. The same power that once broke him open now flows through him as compassion. He carries the memory of the fire, but it no longer burns, it warms. The silence that once haunted him now sings softly beneath every moment. He understands finally that the journey of the soul is never linear. It spirals inward, outward, upward, always returning, yet never repeating. Each heartbreak, each joy, each loss, each dawn, all are movements of the same eternal dance. The man who knows this no longer resists life, he participates in it. When he looks at the world, he no longer asks, "What do I deserve?" He asks, "What is life asking of me now?" And in answering, he finds meaning again and again, for meaning is not a gift to be received, but a responsibility to be lived. Thus, the man who once sought love to escape his emptiness has become love itself. Not the love of romance or desire, but the love that sees and allows, that honors all things for what they are. He walks now as a quiet flame in the world, not seeking to shine, but simply being light. And if you were to meet him, you might not notice anything at first. He would not preach nor perform, but when you looked into his eyes, you would see it, the calm fire, the unshakable stillness, the knowing that needs no words. That is the light that remains after the storm, after the burning, after the long night of the soul. The quiet truth is that what he found was never far away. It had been waiting in the silence all along. The self does not dwell in heaven or in books. It dwells in the beating heart, in the breath that rises and falls, in the gaze that meets life without fear. And so, the man who once fled his pain now carries peace wherever he goes. He does not claim to have mastered life, he has simply learned to trust it. What was once exile has become belonging. What was once emptiness has become light. He knows now nothing is truly lost. Every ending is a seed, every silence a beginning, every wound a door. This is the final transformation, not into something new, but into what he always was. The fire has burned away illusion, the descent has revealed depth, and the light remains gentle, eternal, enough. He has not escaped love. He has become its vessel. And through him, love continues its endless work in the world.